So what I'm hearing you say is that you are regretting the incident, that you were involved, knowing that it was perhaps not the best choice. Is that what you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the underage piece for me that is really of importance. And I mean, you know, again, I feel like there's a difference between on campus and off campus, and I'm not quite sure. Maybe it needs to be clearer for the students about that.
You know, it's interesting you should say that, because we had a conversation about that with the dean, who talked about that there is a student handbook and something that's discussed in orientation, and she suggested we ask you, you know, to what degree, we asked her what she would like students to know about these kinds of policies and protocols, and one of the things she said was we should ask you, to what degree have you been aware of these? What have you been exposed to around the student handbook? What information do you have about those things? Yeah.
You know, that happened freshman year, but it hasn't happened since. And, or if it wasn't obligated, you know, it wasn't obligatory or something. I don't know. But maybe one thing would be to make sure that there are sophomores, juniors, and seniors, the leadership of those, you know, we have student government stuff. The leadership be part of the orientation every year or something. So that then maybe that's reiterated or shared with each group, class. I mean, we're not a big university. So maybe that's one way to do it. I mean,
So
I guess thinking here for a moment, which is this off-campus, on-campus thing needs to be really clear. I mean, a reminder that we represent an institution. I'm not so sure. I don't know what the legality. I don't remember anything about that. I don't really.
So perhaps you're suggesting there should be more of a drug and alcohol awareness from the campus to involve both on and off campus parties or just behavior?
Well, you know, I think people know that drug and alcohol is bad. So I guess the question is about responsibility around how they represent themselves to the public. Somehow that, and also this question, I feel like, which is the underage piece. Now, most of the folks on campus are underage. Seniors, who many of whom are not, you know what I mean, at a certain time. So that's one thing. And I think keeping that somehow, doing the underage thing, and talking about if the police were engaged, what would happen to you if you were, you know what I mean? I do think that the reality of it, I was not, you know, it was only because we were lucky that those people did not call the police.
That's a very good point. In that you had that, you know, the circumstances would be very different, and you would not have the confidentiality that you're actually being granted in this had that actually happened.
Unless the police had the litigation department. They don't have any. Some do, but
in terms of in terms of the question that you're coming back to around the on-campus, off-campus, we did talk to the dean about that, and what was really important to her about the off-campus, and not even just off-campus, is something that's also of concern to you. And she said there should be no minors involved. And I heard you say you see that as a really important point as well. She also mentioned that if non-students are involved in a situation where students are drinking or drugging, there's a huge liability issue for the school. She's also concerned if students are involving non-students in drug activities, And concerned about the students too, not just the non-students. She's also concerned if people would be driving to these off-campus activities while they're impaired. And that on campus there are head residents to look after the students, but when you're out in the community, there's nobody who can say, hey, you know. So that's how she views the difference between the on-campus and the off-campus.
It was really helpful, that other person. I mean, you know, part of this talking is listening. And when people, when different mediators, I just want to say, when they're listening, it's been helpful.
It's helpful to be listened to?
Yes. So, I mean, I agree with her about those things. It's just trying to figure out strategies. I guess that's what I would say. You know, I feel like, you know, as a person who's been pretty responsible, that I lost sight of that. As big moves coming in the way. I don't know how to say, you know, in other words. So it would be helpful to think through that. In other words, what needs to be always in consciousness, and how can we say it in new ways, you know. And I do think the understanding kind of that on-campus, off-campus culture thing, and its implications that you were mentioning or she was mentioning.
So Andrea, and after listening to what you said, I gather that your reputation is very important to you, and you're a very responsible student. But two other things that also stood up to me is our communication and also relationships between the school and the off-campus students. We just talked a little bit more about that. How's the communication and the relationship between the students off-campus and the administration at the school?
You know, I think that off-campus students, you know, that they connect us. I mean, you know, it feels like I'm on campus when I'm off campus with the students, because we're talking, you know, with the students, you know, about campus things and, you know, challenges and all of that. So the relationship just feels like those of us that live on campus, you know things that are happening on campus, sometimes more than off-campus students, but off-campus students know about things that are in the community itself. So, you know, we talk about those things, and so I think there's a feeling of more freedom on campus. Hence, people go to parties off.
She lives on campus.
Okay.
Do you live on campus, Andrea?
I do live on campus. And so these are my friends, you know, at this apartment.
So I also remember you saying that privacy was very important to you, and you felt more comfortable once the agreement was signed. Going through this whole conversation, how do you still feel about that? Are you still at the same level where you were once it was signed, or how are you feeling
I'm feeling good
now
about
that we shared what to do?
Yeah, that's really, I feel okay. I mean, the one outstanding piece has to do with, you know, because I'm 21, I mean, I don't want anybody talking to my parents. And that's one, and I don't hear that, but I just want that, you know, reiterated, I guess. And then the only other thing has to, I mean, not the only other, but of importance to me is what's in the public record versus in private record. I mean, if I had some control over that, I mean, it's that, you know, the privacy thing about not saying anything to other people goes into the I mean, in other words, includes the record for me. I mean, I don't know how it feels, but I can see where, that I would, if I, could create it myself, it would be, that I held accountable for what I did by doing some kind of action on campus. Do you know what I mean? But that this
So-
kind of infraction is not in the public record. It's going to go to my law school that I apply to. Or I won't be able to do it.
So are you saying that you are willing to do something on campus, or take some kind of action that addresses the situation and the incident that happened, but you also want some assurance that this will not be in your public record?
Something also just occurred to me, is that maybe one of those things that could be done is working not only with on-campus students, but working with off-campus. You know what I mean? Sort of the idea that I was sitting out there was that, that piece about maybe having other, people at orientation would come from other
Classes?
Yeah, and then the other might be, I'll make sure that off-campus is part of that conversation. Because that was really important. In addition to the underage, it was also off-campus relationship. People who live off-campus might not have forgotten.
So you mentioned that you're aware of the decision that you made, and you're comfortable being held accountable for your actions. And so offering discussions or forums to students on an ongoing basis, is that something that you would like to partake in as one solution, possible solution in addressing this problem with the school?
Yeah.
So that's what you had in mind?
Yeah. The other is maybe I could help work on a clearer policy or something. Do you know what I mean? In other words, relook at the policies and get maybe a couple of other students. And help relook at the policy and think of ways to make it more clear or something like that.
Are you saying that it's your sense that the way it is now is not clear enough?
Well, since I don't remember,
Okay.
it would be maybe worth taking a look at it and then figuring out how to help, if it's fine the way it is, how to help it make it remembered by people.
Right.
That's
Okay. And that is something you're completely comfortable and willing to do?
Yeah, I've been
if
engaged in lots
the
of
school
things here
agrees
at
with
the
that.
school, yeah.
Okay. And another issue that I still feel as if you're not really sure about is this whole your record and how the school would deal with that. Do you have a suggestion of how you think they should approach this to make sure that it's not on your record, doesn't affect you in the future? Are you aware of any regulations that the school has been involved in the past that you think maybe that could help you in this situation?
I don't actually. The only thing that I would like is that it not be on public record. But that, it's just sort of like signing this thing and signing it with the dean is a way of ensuring verbal confidentiality. Just like the written documentation. What kind of alternatives there are.
Do you have a sense to what extent people on campus know about this incident? I'm assuming there were other people at that party. Did other people?
I'm sure everybody knows that this happened. We're a small place.
Right.
It doesn't take long.
And so there's nothing to be done about that because
That part.
it's done.
I mean, you know, no. But, there's you know how it is with us as students, a little bit of a code about, not telling people necessarily outside. I mean, we're not always kind to each other necessarily, but in terms of outside.
Mhm. So it sounds like you're saying, although on campus, your sense is it's all over, but that you're not concerned that it's going to be broadcast beyond.
I just don't have any control of that part of it. That's in the part that I do. I think about, when I think about my moving into law school and going on for a career, a public document that comes out of an established place is quite different than gossip, so to speak. So that's what I may be wrong, but that's what I think.
So that's really important to you, to know what the policy is around public records.
That last piece is the rest of it, doing whatever needs to be done to make it, to be more responsible or help other people be more responsible, all of that stuff. And, there's no, I can't imagine that someone would come up with something I couldn't do.
I'm thinking that maybe we've spent enough time. I don't want to keep the dean out there wondering. And is there anything else that you want us to talk about with Andrea?
I was actually feeling the same way, that it might be a good time for you and I to discuss what we should do next.
Okay. Is there anything that you've talked about with us that you would not want us to share? Not that you necessarily would, but. Okay, great. If you wouldn't mind going to the waiting room and really comment, let you both know what's next. Okay. Thank you.
Any amount of time to talk about it?
5 minutes,
Okay.
more or less. How many more people have this?
2, 3.
Okay, so we're not ending at 11:30, obviously. So what do you think?
I'm feeling like they're both sort of naturally moving towards wanting to look at solutions. Both of them were saying their concerns and talking about solutions, so I feel like it's kind of moving in that direction. So I wasn't sure if there was any other information we need to elicit first, or if we should just go on into that piece.
I would feel comfortable going into a joint session. No pun intended. So what do you know, and how do we want to strategically approach what we do next?
First question that comes to mind is of the solutions that they were considering, how much, I'm trying to remember what they said about those should be kept confidential, or if we could present them and say that this is what someone said, what do you feel, or if we should just say, you mentioned a few things, what would you mind sharing them?
I lost you.
Sorry. Well, you asked how we should go into this, and so,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So you were talking about in here as opposed to things being confidential when they leave here.
right,
Got it.
right.
Okay.
So I'm thinking maybe the best thing is the last one that I said, which is let them say it in their words to each other.
Well, there was nothing that Andrea said we couldn't share. And the only thing that the dean said we couldn't share was about her own personal feelings. And I don't think that that's really relevant here. So if she brings it up, fine, but I'm not concerned that that's something we would need to have shared in order to move forward.
Right, I was talking about when they suggested possible solutions.
Okay.
So instead of us saying, now Andrea, the dean suggested the solution, what do you think? Maybe we should
I
say,
see.
now you guys both had said some possible solutions, would you be willing to share them with each other and let it come from your words?
Got it. we should, rather than just bringing them in the room and saying, okay, talk to each other about your solutions, maybe do a little, maybe some kind of an intro.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe we could talk about the positive points, focus on the positive points that they shared, or how they are addressing the needs that the others said they have. Like Andrea was saying that she has certain needs, and then in the private session, Nadine affirmed that she appreciates her being a good student and all those things.
Right, and also I think we can say that there's a lot of common ground.
Right.
We don't necessarily have to reiterate it, because that may, well, maybe we should.
That'd probably be a good idea.
Yeah.
Give them a foundation to start from,
Right, do you want to do that?
if you want me to.
How about if we talk about what it is?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Would that be helpful? Well, the common ground, as I see it, is they both agree that the underage piece is a big deal. I think they both agree that safety, both for students and non-students, is important. And I think they both agree that students have some responsibility when they're in public, because Andrea mentioned, if the police had been involved, this would be a whole other situation. We would not be sitting here. It would be out of everyone's hands. So the fact that students need to be thinking about their behavior when they're out in public. I think those are the areas of common ground.
And they both agree with the mediation process rather than just slapping punishment and making Andrea the scapegoat. I think that's important.
Right. Okay. So you feel clear about what those are? Okay. I'll look at the parties.
Okay.
Are you keeping time also? Okay, because mine like actually like not battery, it's only
Like 6 minutes.
so,
Oh, wait, should I stop it?
yeah, I paused it.
Shouldn't even let go.
Oh,
Just their face.
I don't know.
On Monday, Monday.
Yeah, it might be the date. Okay. I know, methodical. It hasn't been on my phone. Yeah. Maybe so.
It's gonna be a fun year.
Saturday we have the tot simulation in the morning. So good afternoon, I'd rather. Yeah. I'll send you I don't know computers. Oh, I have that too.
Yeah, that's right.
Tomorrow, I'll come in at the same time. The top simulation, and we have a simulation on Monday. I mean, let's get it done, right? Let's just make it a really intense couple of days for the rest of my life.
But then are you done? Do you have papers or anything?
Yeah.
Just this one?
Just this one? No, I'll have papers for all those.
Oh,
Yeah.
So what are you going to
Are you in
do?
No, next month.
You did?
Yeah.
So we're taking
With,
not Ken.
not Ken,
Then I can take like
I don't know what that class.
We can.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that like the work I want to do, to be honest. So I'm frustrated I have to make it. And John has said that they tried to, when they had more teachers, they had better options.
Did the clock stop ticking while I was out there? Okay, good. Dean's indisposed at the moment.
Indisposed. The door. The door.
Sorry to be late.
Not a problem.
We want to thank you both for the private sessions and for all the good work that you're doing here today. We've covered a lot of really good ground, and we've discovered that we have a lot of common ground. That you both have talked about how you recognize that, well, first, we appreciate that you both recognize how that you are wanting to use mediation for this situation, and we appreciate that. And some of the other common ground that we covered is you both recognize that underage drinking is a problem, and that there's safety issues concerned for students and for non-students, and that students have a responsibility when they're in public. So it's good that we've come to find some commonalities here.
There was a conversation about the public record. Whether my records would be public or private. And remember we talked about that, I think, at one other time. I can't remember whether it was in the one-on-one or all lived together. And I just, you know, that's just like the signing, you know, by email. It just, you know, anyway, I am, you know, happy to figure out how to help, what's that word? How to, you know, do something for the community because of my infraction.
Do you have any ideas? Do you have some thoughts about that? I guess part of me, when you mentioned that last point, was just wondering if you were to put yourself in my shoes, how you might think about it, and then what are your ideas? I'm really open to hearing them, Andrea. You know, I really, you know, I want to help you through this.
One thing I mentioned was about, you know, I guess the question was, did I remember what the rules say? You know, in other words, in the handbook, there are descriptions of what we're supposed to do on campus. And what I mentioned was just that I forgot. I mean, in other words, we do those at orientation when we're freshmen. And we don't do them. So one idea I have is that the, you know, sophomores, juniors, and seniors could be representatives, you know, student reps or something, could be part of orientation every year. And then be held accountable for reminding their group of what those were every year. So that in the junior, sophomore, junior, and senior year, that would be. That was one.
Can I ask you a clarifying question about that? Did you have any thoughts about the mechanics of how you said there could be representatives and they'd be responsible? Is there already some kind of mechanism in place where there's representatives from classes, or just talk a little bit about how this might be accomplished?
Well, student government has representatives from each of the classes. And also groups, I mean, you know, sort of like representatives of classes and also different groups, I think, on campus are part of
government.
So I guess, it's March, you're graduating in May. I guess I'm wondering, what can be done? What could you possibly take on, commit to over these next few months?
The other
Or
idea.
I don't know if you're around during the summer, if you
No, I don't live very far from you.
So are you saying that you might be
Is that a
available?
day or not a day?
That was a date. Are you saying that you might be available over the summer? Is that what you meant by, I don't live very far from here?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out about when school might start. It probably wouldn't start until September. Going on.
We start in late August with orienting
Yeah.
new students, freshmen.
Yeah. I do have some ideas.
Would you like to tell us?
Sure. I thought you asked me to go a little more slowly so that other people could have an opportunity.
You are speaking nicely.
Thank
slowly.
you.
I
Okay.
do
So sorry.
appreciate that.
Out of role for a moment.
I know, me too.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I said was that there are two dings.
There's a minute warning, and then there's the,
See, I don't know the drill.
didn't you read the manual?
Not that manual.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. So one idea that I had was that maybe would be to relook at the manual together. Read the manual and think about why someone doesn't, why I didn't remember, I guess.
But is that true, Andrea? Did you not remember?
That's true.
You didn't remember that it's illegal to carry marijuana in your pocket?
Not off campus. See, this is the thing that's different for me, is that I'm not saying, is that right? I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying that is something, in other words, in terms of school policy, I know what that means.
You know that it's not
Legal.
allowed on campus either, marijuana.
That, I do know that absolutely, that on campus, underage, or marijuana anyway, but alcohol not allowed on campus, although that, if people are over 21. Anyway, we're in New York, right? Is it 21 or 18?
It's 21.
Thank you very much. It used to be actually 18.
That was a long time.
That was a long time ago,
When your
when I lived in Connecticut.
When your parents were
Right, when your parents were your
growing
age.
up. No, but I really, I want to make this productive, but we're entering some gray zone here, and I just feel like, let's get a few ideas down, a few points down. Now, you've mentioned this public record thing. I went and I made the effort with Dean Myers that are, that he and I will do confidential what we agree to with you, okay? And that our process won't be shared with him.
Whether you want to.
Yeah. We haven't discussed the issue of your parents or not. But really more importantly, I just feel like let's come up with a plan. What is the plan? In the judiciary board, as I said before, some students even get expelled. And of course, I don't want that for you. I don't think you deserve that. I don't see a history of substance use with you or any of this. But we do need to come up with some tangible plan that feels that it's also making you accountable. And I hear what you're saying about our overarching issues and how to keep students educated. So one idea here is about health education, but you're here as a student for like 6 more weeks. So
I guess why I was sort of asking about what happens in June and July, and whether there is some things that I could try to, I could make some efforts to do that.
I think
one word I've heard you both using and both referring to is clarity, and really coming to a clarification about what's in the handbook. And I think it's important to clarify it during orientation, but I think what I also hear you saying is that it might be important to clarify it now for other students, and maybe you included. How does that?
Yeah, that was part of my thinking, was that, I mean, maybe you know it, I mean, it occurred to me that I could work with someone who's going to be here, you, an administrator over time, and then really go through that manual and think at each place if there are, ways in which to, number one, make sure that we, students, don't forget what it says over time. But also, I mentioned in another, I think it was when we were in the session, alone, was a private session, was also, I mean, what I said was that it was by grace that the police were not called.
You get that.
I get that. I really get that. And so it then occurred to me that the reiterating, I'm not sure that, as I remember, that reiterating the implications of the legal system. I don't know how to, sometimes we feel secure on campus, we feel like a student group, and then when people are off campus, they think they're still part of the student group. But even though that's part of the regulations that you've talked about, I think there's a feeling of somehow insularity, I guess I wanted to say, from being responsible. That's how I feel. I feel like it was a stupid thing to do, and yet it felt like, these were the students. I mean, I didn't invite, I didn't know. We talked, I guess, here about also not, thinking about ways in which you have people, I don't know, it's like people jump, I was saying that people go into parties and they crash them and they destroy them. I mean, we need to, when people open a party like that, they have to know who's there. And I don't think always people know who's there because it's such a big party. I don't know. It was just sort of ideas and thoughts. I don't have it down, but there were things about making people understand actually the legal implications of, you could be thrown in jail, you could be misdemeanors, you could be, had the police come, what would have happened, and think about that together and think about how to make sure that people are aware of that. In addition to this question of being, respectful of the school itself and the implications of what could happen to other students. I think sometimes we, are thinking just about ourselves, but not about the community. That's not true all the time. I don't feel like I've loved this school. I've learned a lot. I've been a really good student.
And the dean said that about you, that you've been a really good student and an asset.
Yeah, and so, then I think that's, about how to make it both scare people, I guess that's what I want to say, because the ramifications of that, the scariness of that, if it had been the police, is very clear to me.
Can you go into a little bit more detail what you mean by scare people?
Yeah, what I mean is be realistic, I guess. When I say scare, it's myself. In other words, if the police would come, my parent, I don't know, it depended on what the bail was. I don't know what would have happened.
Right.
I don't, actually. Be finding out more of what's happened under those circumstances.
Well, what do you feel about me calling your parents?
I would ask that you don't do that.
And if you were the parent, how would you feel if the institution where you sent your child to study didn't call you in a situation like this?
Well, this hasn't gone to, I mean, this is a mediation. I guess what I'm wanting to say is that I'm 21, and I feel that if I want to talk to my parents about this, I could do it in my own time, and I would do it myself. So, you know, it's not that I don't have a good relationship with these folks, but I feel like that I would, again, it depends on what we say here, but that to me,
If you were in my shoes, would you feel a responsibility to call parents in a situation like this?
I think if it were a situation of someone being, you know, drunk, addicted to drugs, they had a car accident, yes. But I don't know if this is, you know, I mean, it just feels to me, given,
I mean, I'm of two minds. Part of me feels like, you know, I'm comfortable engaging in a mediation process with you, but I also feel accountability to, you know, as I've said before, Dean Myers, and as I sit with it more, and if I were a parent, and this whole process went on without me knowing it, I would have some concern, and I just want to raise that.
And I think both of you have really brought up that you value health and safety and accountability for this, and so, and I think that Cambria shares that value. Is that accurate?
yeah, I mean, I think the point here is about folks.
Yeah, can I ask a clarifying question about that? In the situation that you're in now, where, as you mentioned, you didn't have an accident, you're not addicted to drugs, it's not underage drinking, what is it that you would communicate to parents? How have you dealt with that in the past?
I mean, again, if this had happened, if it had happened that the police had come from the town, your parents would know about this. So, that we're supporting you in coming to an agreement that we will come to today, I hope. I realize we don't have a lot of time in it, and we haven't finished this process, but I'm hoping that we're gonna come to something specific, because the dean is gonna be asking. And I want that for you, so that time is short. But I'm just raising the parent issue because I feel like it's also significant that, yeah, what would that look like? You know, that you or you and I would be in touch with them.
Did you say you or I? Or did you say
You or
and
you and I. But again, I think we're getting off topic. I would have liked if, and maybe this is part of the restorative justice mediation process, I would have loved to have seen, and maybe you did this for yourself as a kind of homework, a plan of action for yourself to be presented here with me about what you concretely feel like you could take on. I mean, you're a law student, you're a pre-law student, you've been doing this kind of stuff. You know, I don't know, for example, if you have a final term paper due and you want to do a deeper investigation on restorative justice, or thinking about a peer education program that could be put in place, you know, working with our health educator, like if in your, you know, next 6 weeks you want to do some serious research on that. But I need us to come to some commitment here about what's going to happen, or if you're available to work over the summer, you know, X number of hours on coming up with some kind of added curriculum that could go hand in hand with our health educator that includes peer educating. We're looking for something substantial that could come out of this. And to me, that would be, you know, falling under your pre-law background and also restorative justice approach. So I've been waiting to hear from you, but those are some ideas I have.
That's great. Actually,
I'm just going to say, I'm glad to hear you mention some of these potential kind of problem-solving areas And you mentioned in the past about the accountability piece that seems to be really important to you. And I'm wondering if you could talk more about that piece and what that looks like to you.
We can't just walk away from this situation. However I feel personally about small amounts of marijuana and social gatherings, and, you know, I can see again that you're a responsible person and whatever, but we have minors involved, we have community involved, and we have other students on campus who will be looking to see that when an infraction is made, how is it handled? So I feel strongly as the team that we handle this in the most responsible and clear way.
So you're,
I just wanted to make an observation here. You're really interested in looking at a plan, creating a plan of what Andrea will do. And I don't hear you resisting that at all. You're interested in that happening as well. It seems like there's two other issues that we keep getting pulled away from this plan by. And that is what, if anything, will Andrea's parents know, and what, if anything, will go into the public record. So I'm wondering, would you rather talk about those two things before the plan, or would you like to talk about the plan and then come back to those two things? Because I don't want you to feel that those two things are getting lost.
I mean, I'm happy to talk. I mean, I just thought that you raised some really important ideas, actually, for a plan. I didn't come from the plan. I came with a lot of angst, I guess I would say, anxiety about all of this.
So do you want to talk about the plan?
Yeah, as long as we can get to the others.
I feel more comfortable with that, because I feel like if we come up with something solid and concrete, I'm going to feel better about these other issues. But if we never get that, then I'm going to feel kind of responsible to push on other things that I'd rather not push on.
Sandra, I was wondering if you could reiterate for us what you heard Dean Summers say about some potential solutions.
Yeah, what I noticed about what you said is that the ideas that I had actually were system, kind of a bigger, broad system, which was like student body and future thing. But I never thought about the power of writing a paper about this in my law course, which I feel like would allow me, give me a way to really focus on all these aspects that I'm not quite clear about kind of in my own mind right now. I mean, in terms of my own being myself as an example of infraction and what that means in terms of a larger system. So I really, actually, that felt like a really important piece to do.
And, you know, maybe that involves researching what are other schools doing, how are they handling this, and maybe coming up with some recommendations for our school, like, that then you could sit down with me and Dean Myers and the health educator. Because if you were a junior, it would be more realistic that we could think about setting up a peer education program or something that you are actively a part of. I mean, the idea is good, but you're not going to be here to follow through on it. So if you, I mean, we don't have a lot of extra time. You know, this process is taking a lot of time. I'm fine with it. But you know, if something really solid and concrete can come out, and you can use your law background to help us, you know, look at if there are any amendments should be made to the handbook, if there's a, you know, we'd be open to using your smart brain to help us rethink this a little, because we want students to be aware of their actions. You know, poster campaign. I mean, there's so many ways to go with this.
So I'm hearing that potentially a paper with some research involved in looking at what other schools are doing might be a potential, at least one step.
I think the plan of action is what
I mean, I'm thinking something like a 20-page research paper.
Yeah. one piece
I
that
had to
did
do that in my law class.
One piece of information just that I feel I need a little bit more clarity on from you is, I understand it was campus security that was involved in the actual breaking up of the party. And I'm wondering if, when you've mentioned accountability in the past, is there something specific that the school needs as far as accountability to the security? You know, as far as something, or is that really under the authority now of the administration that they can move forward however they need? Or is there some level of accountability that still needs to happen to campus security?
I think the accountability is with the dean and with you, and really, I'm really back to your parents.
So the paper, can I go back to the idea about that paper and action?
One, I'd like, is anybody are you taking notes?
Yeah.
Because I'd like help with what we agreed to.
Oh, sure, and we can write up the agreement
Okay.
at the end.
Me too.
Sure.
So my thought was that, so it's an action plan and then meeting with you
And your graduation will, this needs to happen. And if we decide that ideally we'd like to wrap this up by the time you graduate.
Yeah.
But if for some reason it can't, then we've got to look at that.
Can I just check with you in terms of what I think I've heard you say so far about this plan? And let me know if I don't have this right. You talked about the paper that Andrew would write on restorative justice and mediation and research what do other schools do, about a 20-page paper. That there might be some way of working with the health educator was another idea, and another idea was the possibility of looking at amending the handbook or how it's utilized. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and recommendations. Make concrete recommendations made
By whom to you?
as a result of this paper.
Okay.
Research what's happening in other schools related to restorative justice and drug and alcohol use infractions on campus. I thought your idea about, I don't know if I just came off of this, but if one were to think about a peer education program or something, we want to be able to take what you bring us and then feed it into maybe even next year's programming. So maybe we would ask you to come back in the summer, if you are local, to sit down with us, if this is something we feel you can do, and to take those recommendations and think about an action plan.
That's what I was going to say, actually. One of those questions came was, maybe like June and after July or something like that. We might be able to do that. I was going to offer that up. Actually, it's a fall, since it's so late in the term. Actually.
So do you have time to do this paper? I'm kind of putting in more in my brain, 20, 25 pages. This may take more time. And if what you learn, for example, maybe you do a short literature review kind of thing. Sorry. And then, that's just an aside. Because we have a long history here. And our course is a good review. Anyway. Sorry. So, no, but I'd like to see some concrete recommendations, including if you come up with a poster campaign as part of this. You could even, mock up some posters.
Yeah, if that were part of what we agreed to.
And perhaps a PowerPoint that could be made to Dean Myers and the health educator, Helen Lennon, and myself on what you find.
Ideally, in practice, because we don't do that pretty long, very much.
Well, it would be, but whatever, a presentation to us on your findings. Okay, so the paper would need to be, I think, before you graduate. Presentation could happen afterwards. We're all so busy.
Like in June, July, that part. that I could maybe work on with them.
Let me see, if you just mentioned a whole list of things. Let me see if I have these right and how this sounds to you. 20 to 25 page paper with a literature review, recommendations that would be made, specific recommendations made, and over the summer, work with the health educators to come up with an action plan for putting recommendations into place, a presentation to the deans about the findings, and a poster campaign.
It sounds like a lot of things, but I actually think, you know, in the 20 to 25 page paper, kind of the material that we're interested in.
It doesn't seem like, I mean, it's a big, you know, it's a big project, but it's a very exciting project to me actually, because I was thinking about trying to figure out some of these things, and that feels like a better way of moving through.
So it seems like it might be something that, given you, despite the amount of work, it actually could help you in moving towards your steps towards law school, which is one of your concerns.
Yeah, also I feel like you're up and having this idea really provides me to reflect. I mean, I feel like I haven't had much time to actually really think about this. And that's a little bit of my connection to this, my parents, I think. I'm just sort of asking for some, allowing me to do that in my own time. I mean, I have a good relationship with my parents. It's just that I feel like I need this experience of doing this research work and all of that to help myself understand it more. And, you know, it's not like I don't tell my parents when we talk about hard things we do. So I will promise to tell you when I do talk, if you would be willing to do that.
Still asking.
Okay, say that again. You
I mean,
promised to
I
tell them
promise
yourself.
to tell my parents myself, and we can write that down. And that I will let you know when I do that I tell them about this and what this, you know, because I feel like the results of it, you know, will help me to think more clearly about the importance of it. I don't know how to
Yeah,
describe this.
no, it makes sense. My only little thought here is, if I was the parent and I learned about it, I mean, I don't know if I learned about it a year later, or 6 months later, or 2 months later.
So are you saying the timeline is important to you?
Yeah.
But if I did it in June, as opposed to doing it in right now?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how do you guys feel about using the writing of this paper as a way to initiate the conversation with your parents? You say you're doing this work, you're very excited about this work, and use that as a doorway to why.
I think that's what I heard you suggesting.
Yeah.
That the writing of the paper would clarify for you.
But using the process, because there's a private piece, which is about, that I've noticed, it seems to be about you, and sort of where you need to be in your head to understand this in relation to your future. And there's the public piece, which is how the school is represented. Is that fair? Or is that maybe something?
Yeah, no, there's this sort of sense of liability, accountability, responsibility, and how do you feel your parents would respond to this approach if they heard from me but they didn't hear from me as well? I mean, in terms of their reaction.
Well, maybe we could, you know, maybe we could write this letter together.
Or
Maybe meet with them together. The thing is that I would love to meet with them after having done some more of this, you know, kind of investigation and thinking about a plan. That's all.
So how about paper in March, sometime in the next month, we set up a meeting for parents. And that, if by that point, hopefully you're midway through your paper process, you've already completed the mediation process, we have an agreement, and you're in process. That's pushing it actually. In my world, I would rather see that coming sooner rather than later.
Can I please ask a question about this? What's the underlying need for you around the parents knowing? I heard you talk about liability. I heard you talk about if you were a parent, what you might want to know. What's sort of driving the bus on this one?
Kind of responsibility and care for you actually, kind of like wanting to pass you back. I mean, I realize that you're actually moving on to your next level of growth. So I guess I feel responsible. I feel kind of in a parentified role, and I want to share that. And I also feel like if I was a parent, I would be upset if I didn't know.
So it sounds like it's coming from.
Maybe it's my role as a parent, actually. You know, I have an 18-year-old, and I would be really concerned for her and her future.
So, just
And yet I know you're responsible, and I appreciate that you're wanting to take this paper on. Actually, it would be great for us. And I think you have the smarts to help us with this. Thank you.
just as a point, since you are a parent and you mentioned you're in this parental role, how do you think you would you prefer to hear about this news from your daughter or your son, or would you prefer to hear about it from an administrator?
I'd actually rather you from my daughters, for sure.
Do you think that that might be the same here?
So what would be timing for you? What would be the timing for you?
What I would like is to be able to be more deeply involved in doing some of the planning, like what I would do to be made accountable. I think that would matter to my folks, actually.
I see.
Kind of that I'd thought through that portion of it, that we had worked on this together, and that this was going to be contributing something to the school. And rather than saying it, my parent, and my dad in particular, sort of likes the concrete, to see it. So I guess that's why I wanted to say to you that I am going to share this with my parents, and I would send you or let you know that I did do that. I mean, I'm not wanting to share it with my parents.
Yeah, I know. I'm backing off on that because I heard what you're saying. I mean, you're reminding me. You're not a minor anymore. You're 21 and you're about to go to law school, and you're a responsible adult, and you've been really clear about being accountable for your actions. And I'm excited. I'm actually excited about this because I think you'll be able to contribute something to our school.
Absolutely too. So it sounds like you're now comfortable with Andrea's timeline and understanding that if she can present them with some specific way she's going to be accountable, that it will be probably a better conversation from her parents' perspective. And that meets your needs in terms of the school responsibility.
And I may have to help Dean Myers understand this, because he's kind of old school on this process. And I think that's a little bit of, as you said earlier, the fifth person in the book. And that's a responsibility I take on for empowering choosing to come into the mediation process with you. So I think you've done a nice job with this, Andrea. And I know you were frightened when we first got together.
I want to put this on pause for just a second, because I would like to be able to get to at least a sketch of an agreement so you can see how we pull that together. Can we just jettison the issue of the public record? In a real mediation, obviously wouldn't. But now we're at a point where we have the semblance of an agreement. I'd love to be able to wrap that up. So
That's fine.
Do you want to summarize what the points of agreement are? I think so.
Yeah, so what I see happening as far as things that you guys seem to be agreeing to is that there will be a research paper written, and we'll touch on points of how other schools deal with perhaps the jurisdiction of on-campus, off-campus relationships, how they deal with substance issues, and you really draw on your positive law background to make this a really academic paper that can provide recommendations and other ideas for the administration. All right?
I like the plan. I mean, there's recommendations, but also then following up. At least I would follow up with some aspect of that plan in preparation for the fall.
Right, well, we would invite you to present your findings to Dean Myers and I and our health educator, and with some action plan, with some recommendations for action. Obviously, you won't be a student manager, so, but we would love to learn from you know, in your own personal process. I mean, it sounds like you're going to do some reflecting in the process, and maybe it's not going to, the reflections may not fit into the academic paper, partly to protect your privacy, but, you know, I invite you to take time to reflect on that. And I personally love to hear about your reflections on it. You know, what was it like? I mean, I would love a 5-page paper on, you know, what would it like to be part of the mediation process, for example.
And I was just curious because you mentioned that it's already been in the gossip room, that people already sort of know what's going on a peer level. I'm wondering if you might be comfortable communicating your story, or if you'd be interested in communicating your story to that peer level next year to help them further understand this process, the restorative process, what the complications are, and address the public piece that she seems to be.
You know, I think that it probably is best if we let these two folks figure out what will work for them. Not that it might not be a great solution, but.
And the other, I think, is the running plan, and I'm going to let you know when I talk to my parents. And sort of what that was, how that worked, and what it was like.
So does this paper fit into one of your courses, or do you want, I mean, I'd like a copy, you know, by May 5th.
Yeah, I think the papers, yeah, that's, yeah, that will fit, yeah. I'll just talk to, I mean, I have a sort of a project paper that's due for a particular course, and I didn't have to have a plan in place until just next week.
I feel like you can find your way with the confidentiality piece by in the term paper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, make it a public document. Yeah, I mean, if you want
For yourself, with your own instructor. I mean, you don't need to reveal, you reveal as much as you choose to reveal. How you're choosing that topic or not.
I mean, I hear two things, I think. One is a paper that maybe be able to be used by, you know, given and used and all of that stuff. And then the other is a self-reflective piece that you would like to know.
Yeah. And that could be more informal in a conversation. Or if you're a writer and you want to write me something, that's fine.
But that would be, I would actually like to.
That's important. I think that is important.
So what I hear happening is that there's an academic paper and then also a personal paper
Yeah, or a conversation.
or conversation.
And I
Your
would-
choice.
I would choose between a paper or a conversation.
Since accountability seemed like an issue, do you think that some of the personal issues and this personal conversation could happen sooner to help her feel the resolution towards that?
I don't need that.
Okay.
Your personal reflection will come as a result, I think, of your work. So when you're ready, let me know, and we'll do it between now and sometime when we meet, was it in June?
Yes.
So let me summarize what I've heard you say, and I'll write this up. The parties met on December 1st, and together came up with the following agreements to address the issue that brought them to mediation. Parties agree that Andrea will write a paper that will include recommendations that will be made in a presentation to the dean and the health educator around restorative justice and mediation coming from, as a result of this experience, looking into what do other schools do in situations like this, what are their policies and protocols, etc. And parties also agree that Andrea will work over the summer around implementation of some of these recommendations during June and part of July. And Dean Summers agrees not to talk to Andrea's parents, but that Andrea will talk to her parents after she's done some of this work and has some of the ideas about the action plan for accountability, which she thinks will be important to them. And she will let you know when she's done that. And there will be a conversation or a paper written by June about learnings from this experience. And how does that feel to each of you?
Feels good to me. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Yeah.
Okay.